Such a great panel. Y'all are so impressive, and I'm actually a bit humbled, so you'll excuse me if I stutter a little bit here. And I also want to thank the organizers of this for putting it together, including Kenya Joseph and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Food Policy Council, Sam DeRosa and the Farmers Market Management Services, Jalen Cates and the North Carolina Food Systems Advocacy Coalition, and the American Heart Association. And thanks to Union at Station West again, and Mary Jane for the food. Thank you so much for doing this. Let's give them a hand for their support of our food system. So we have some long-term food advocates here, people like me who want to make sure that our food is nutritious, delicious, and affordable. Trying to keep our prices of eggs down, but also making sure farmers get paid a living wage and that families in Mecklenburg County can get the food they need. I think I speak for all of us when I say that we're excited that you're interested in doing this too. So let's meet our panelists before we dive in here. Most of them need no introduction, but I'm going to try. So first, I'm welcoming Dr. Alma Adams, who's represented the 12th Congressional District of Mecklenburg County in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2014. And it includes this area, so you actually represent the ground we're on. She's served on the Committee on Agriculture, as well as the Committees on Education and Labor and Financial Services, all very connected to our food system. Many of us know her through her regular Adams Hunger Coalition meetings, which she has convened since 2015. So thanks for doing that work. Jeff Jackson was elected in 2022 to represent the new 14th Congressional District in North Carolina, which stretches from Matthews to Gastonia. Before that, he served as a North Carolina state senator for this area from 2014 to 2022. I have to mention his viral fame to claim as a lone legislator at work during a snow day when he tweeted his legislative work wish list, and I've got a little screenshot up there on that. He continues his social media influence by using TikTok to explain the legislation, and his priorities include healthcare, climate change, and combating poverty, all of which connect to our food system and the Farm Bill. So welcome, Jeff. Barbara Bleiweis has served on the Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District since elected in 2018 and now serves as chair. For those of you unfamiliar with this, Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District, it's part of the North Carolina government and its mission is to conserve and improve soil, water, and related resources within Mecklenburg County watersheds for all current and future land uses by promoting, implementing, and publicizing programs built on best management. Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful. Yeah. Barbara has long-term business experience as well as a history of public service, and she chairs the Community Conservation Committee for the North Carolina Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. We also welcome Brett Rapkin, who is a small farmer of 8 years in Alamance County and is with the North Carolina Food System Advocacy Coalition and works as an advocate. She's been with them for their 2-year existence as an organization. Welcome, Brett. And last but not least, our last two panelists, Wisdom and Jzar, are our first generation urban farmers who together run Deep Roots CPS Farm here in Mecklenburg County. You may have seen them at local farmers markets where I met them selling their farm's organic products. They've also advocated for healthy foods and for farming, drawing on Wisdom's experience as a sustainable farmer and Cherie's experience in planning and program development. Welcome, both of you. So today, we're all here to talk about the Farm Bill. Some of you may be wondering what it is and why do we care? If you're here mainly for the snacks, let me assure you the Farm Bill is also all about the food, so you've got something in common. So the Farm Bill is a package of legislation that is passed roughly every 5 years, and it includes everything from crop insurance for farmers to healthy food access for low-income families. It's up for renewal this year. It was last renewed in 2018, and I remember those discussions. Alma Adams led those quite well. It was really interesting. So you can see here the 12 parts of it. You've got conservation, commodities, and crop insurance, but the biggest part is nutrition. And nutrition includes SNAP, WIC, and other programs for family assistance, as well as a couple of pandemic response funds. And the other category includes a lot of other things too. So I just wanted you to see what is actually in here. My first question for our panel is, which aspect of the Farm Bill are you paying the most attention to and why? And we're going to start with Dr. Adams.
First of all, Michael, first of all, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for what you do. If you're hungry, you're not healthy. And if you're not healthy, then you can't learn and you can't work. So I just want to thank you, first of all, for having the food since we're working today. But the aspect of the farm bill that I'm going to pay a lot of attention to and that I'm paying a lot of attention to right now has to do with nutrition. We have more than 165, 170,000 people who are food insecure right here in this district. 50,000 of those are kids who go to bed hungry every night. I can't think of a greater investment of this bill than to invest it in where we see 76%. Well, that means, as far as I'm concerned, that there are lots of folks who are not being fed who need to be. So that's where my emphasis is going to be.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, similarly, school meals. I had some folks from CMS School Nutrition come and meet with me in my office last week and talk to me about rule changes during the pandemic, which were very beneficial, that allowed students to eat irrespective of their ability to pay. And now those rules, those temporary allowances going away as we exit the pandemic. And the lesson we learned was that it was incredibly useful to have school meals be something that children could have irrespective of whether or not they could pay, and that we really should keep that in place permanently. We should make that something that we learned through the pandemic that we apply. We aren't really in the habit of telling kids with respect to other things when they show up to school that now you need to take out your wallet and give us money, right? But for some reason we do that with meals. And CMS, unlike other counties, does not cut students off once they haven't paid for 3 meals in a row. A lot of counties in North Carolina cut students off and say, you cannot have any food today because you weren't able to pay for your last 3 meals, including some large counties in North Carolina that you wouldn't necessarily think. So that's become, it's a financial problem here for students, and it's a stigma problem. It is also an empty belly problem for a lot of students. And I'm not sure everybody fully grasps that comes right out of the Farm Bill. It's going to be a huge piece of the debate.
Great, thank you so much. Supervisor Bleiweis.
Thank you. I'm focused on all of it because it all ties into farmers feeding the children, feeding the adults, but the food has to come from somewhere. But a more direct answer also is when you look at the Farm Bill and 80% is nutrition, there's a lot of, the 20% covers a lot of things. Conservation is one, and crop insurance. Within Mecklenburg County, the conservation is those funds that would ultimately funnel to us and through the USDA for voluntary, locally led conservation. What some people didn't appreciate is that the programs that we offer for water quality, improving crop yields and so forth, really focuses on the economic sustainability, lowering the costs of farming, the inputs, less reliance on fertilizers, et cetera. In some recent discussions with farmers, 100% of them talk about regenerative, low input, organic types of processes, which would increase yields, but increase profitability. If our farmers aren't making money, it doesn't matter how much they're producing, they can't stay in business, right? So those programs, and you'll hear terms like EQIP and CSP, they're all voluntary. And our belief is that let the locally led voluntary officials here work with the farmers, because we know our land and our farmers better than DC does. And that will be a very consistent message. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, great. And that's a great transition to our farmers. So Brett, as a representative of the North Carolina Coalition, will you let us know a little bit about your aspects of the Farm Bill you're paying attention to and why?
Yeah. Is it okay? I think you said it perfectly that you can't separate out nutrition from the farmers. So we're looking at protecting and strengthening SNAP and other federal programs in nutrition, but also protecting and expanding our resilient regional food systems and making sure that we're investing in small, mid-sized farmers that are using regenerative practices that are able to sell at local markets, that those markets are able to accept SNAP and EBT, and that we're just able to have a stronger food system that is rooted in climate smart agriculture.
And Wisdom and Cherie, where do you all stand on the Farm Bill? What things are you excited about?
So I'm gonna, while I speak, he's gonna pass his mic to Barbara, so she didn't have to borrow one, so we could share.
Thank you.
So, the biggest thing for us is equity through and through in the Farm Bill. Equity for first generation farmers like ourselves, women farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers, to ensure that all aspects of growing food, having access to resources like land and capital and all those things that you need in order to grow, that we have that. We won't have food in the cafeteria. We won't have food in the grocery stores if we don't have farmers producing those. And we do know that the landscape of farmers across the nation, and especially in urban areas, do not look like Wisdom and I, right? Do not look like us in terms of our race and also our age. We have an aging farmer group. So equity is what we're looking for to provide, like I said, access to capital, access to resources, and then the markets that we desperately need throughout our community in order to provide us a place to sell those. So that's what we're particularly looking for. Do you want to add anything?
Great. Thank you all so much. And I will say I'm a little biased towards the nutrition part of the bill, but that's because that's what I've been looking at is access and how we can improve access in Mecklenburg County. The organizers have actually asked me to share a little bit about the work I've done, so I apologize for the brief intermission into this, but I've been working for a couple of years on the State of the Plate effort. We've done surveys and interviews with both organizations and businesses around Mecklenburg County in phase 1. Phase 2, we actually did surveys with households in the county, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. And then we're actually starting now to have some discussions about where do we go from here? Given what we know, what do we need to do to improve our local food system? So we ran a survey. We drafted this with a lot of organizations around the county. So it wasn't just us at the Mecklenburg Food Policy Council. It included a lot of people who are in this room actually, which has been great. And we shared this via the organizations, a lot of whom serve low-income residents. And so our survey is biased towards those residents. We don't have a representative sample, but we think the results are still really important. We ended up with about 700 responses, and it includes in the survey some questions from the USDA that help us determine if someone is food secure or not. So I'll talk about those in a minute. And you can see on the right here what we used to recruit through social media and through emails and things like that so that people could come and join us and tell us a little bit about their experiences with the food system. So how do we know if someone's food insecure? How do we know if they're struggling with hunger? The USDA has a series of 10 questions. There's actually a couple different ways to do that, but the one that people use has 10 questions, and it asks questions like this that you see on the left. I worried whether my food would run out before I got money to buy more, if this was often true or sometimes true or never true in the past 12 months. And the second question, were you ever hungry but didn't eat because there wasn't enough money for food, yes or no? If they answer yes for that bottom one, or sometimes or often for the top one, we give them a point. The number of points determines kind of where this cutoff is. So if you have 0 to 2 points, you're food secure. You're considered that you're able to get the food you need. If you have 3 to 5 or 6 to 10, you're considered food insecure according to the USDA. So in our survey, as I said, it was a biased sample of those who tend to be low income. 70% of our respondents were food insecure according to this definition. Now, luckily, the county ran its BRFIS survey, which is the behavioral risk factor surveillance system through the CDC. They ran that this year, and we got some actual representative sample information. And that's on this last one. About 20% of our county is food insecure using a 2-item version of the USDA questions. So that's not great. That's 1 in 5. In the past, it had been about 15%. So we do think there's been a bit of an increase. We're not sure if that's related to the pandemic or other reasons, but that's a really important number to kind of keep in mind. We're talking 1 in 5. Now, our survey did have some other questions in there that we think help us understand why people are food insecure and what kind of challenges they face. People who are more likely to be food insecure have some characteristics. This is just correlates. So low income, which shouldn't surprise you. It's harder to get food if you have less income. Lower education levels as well, if you have less education. If you suffer from chronic illnesses, physical disabilities, or mental disorders, that's also something that correlates with being food insecure. And it also turns out military experience, being Black or African American, and having a larger number of children in the family also relate to food insecurity according to our survey results. So these are the people in Mecklenburg County we should be worried about because they tend to have a higher risk of food insecurity. Doesn't mean they are, but they have a higher risk of being food insecure. Now, we also wanted to know what could help them, right? We're looking for solutions. We know that this is a challenge in our community. So we ask in our surveys, what would help you eat better? So a lot of people talk about money. They want cheaper fruits and vegetables. They want more money. They want things that are a little bit more affordable. And those are our top two answers. They're also looking for more access to things like fresh fruits and vegetables, finding time to get food, to both shop and prepare food, and even with budgeting. So we know these are priorities for our county. I'm also including a quote here because it highlights some of the things we've heard, especially given people who have challenges getting food or preparing food, that it's not just always about having money. There are other challenges people face, like being able to actually cook or get to the grocery store. And we're hearing some of those stories now when we're having our community meals. So I've just covered a lot of ground, and I apologize for the speed and rapidity. We'll have a full report from this coming out soon. Ray, my research assistant, is there in the back, and he's helping me finish this report. But I have a question for you based on what I've just presented. If you could go back to the last slide, Ray. Thanks. How might provisions in the Farm Bill help people with these issues? Would anyone like to go first?
Well, I think we need to fund it adequately. That's number one. But I wanted to raise something when you talked about access. And one of the things that I've noticed since I have been in this community is the lack of markets, the lack of grocery stores. So we have food deserts. And so people don't have access. And we talk about having healthy meals, healthy food. You don't always get that from the corner store. And so you have a lot of communities, especially some of the low wealth communities, if you will, where you just don't have that. You have those gaps, and people, even if they had the money, you don't have the local stores, et cetera. But I do think that we have to think very seriously as we talk about this Farm Bill and put it together. By the way, the current bill, the 2018 bill, runs out the end of September, but it actually will, based on the way things are set up, it will actually stay in effect until the end of the calendar year, which will be December. But that's still not a long time. And what I would encourage people to do, and I'm glad that we're doing this today, and I've said even at my Hunger Initiative meeting on yesterday, the points that you want to make, because you're not going to be there to make them, and I'm going to make them for you. I want people to send us those talking points very succinctly, the argument to counter what I know is going to be presented, and that is to disband this whole SNAP program, all these feeding programs that we're talking about. There's evidence that folks are going to cut it and, if necessary, eliminate. And so when my colleague here spoke about the CMS to schools, yesterday I learned that we have children who couldn't pay. And so we've got that bill there. Well, first of all, I don't think we should be billing children. They should be able to eat. We should be able to provide that. But anyway, I didn't want to pick up on.
Yeah, the free school lunch program is something that's been growing across the country. And as a college educator, I actually might encourage to go further than K-12, but that's another question.
We've got college students who are hungry, who are homeless. And we can't forget those in this whole process.
Any other responses to how provisions in the Farm Bill might help us address some of these issues that have been raised around access and hunger?
Well, conservation, if you saw the first pie chart, it's only like 7% of the entire thing, but it really punches above its weight as a relatively small section of the Farm Bill. You heard Barbara talk about how the cycle sort of goes from when it comes to conservation, Farm Bill funding to USDA, to the localities, and then to farms and programs for farmers. We've seen that here in Mecklenburg, and its conservation is crucially important in places like our county that are growing very quickly because there's a window of opportunity that is closing to conserve land. And we have some folks here who work on land that has recently been put aside for conservation here in Mecklenburg that will be one of the critical urban farms that we have access to for generations because an effort was made to conserve in the midst of all of this development. So some people associate Farm Bill stuff with rural communities, and yes, 100%, but also the conservation piece is really critical to urban communities. And for some of this stuff, you want a farmer's market nearby, you want more fruits and vegetables nearby. Well, for an urban community, that means you have to be a long-term thinker when it comes to land that you're willing to set aside right now, because it won't be available to be set aside 10 years from now. It'll be paved.
I'd like to make a couple comments as well. Thank you for that. The conservation aspects will focus on increasing production. I can't emphasize that enough. When we can help our farmers increase production at a low cost and increase profitability, more can be done. I'll add the following, that the programs coming out of USDA, both within the Farm Bill and then related through IRA dollars, which we're getting a huge infusion, focus specifically on underserved communities, farmers of color, et cetera. Thank you, Dr. Adams, for the bill that you recently introduced also. That is huge. The district relies very much on those programs, some money from North Carolina Department of Ag, but also grants that we pursue. And the emphasis is on equity, diversity, inclusion, especially for veteran, women, Black, people of color. And that is our focus going forward. So thank you.
Yeah, she mentioned that bill, and I just wanted to comment because two folks, wisdom, I was gonna call him knowledge, but wisdom has knowledge.
His brother.
That's his brother. His brother's name is knowledge and he's wisdom. But I think wisdom here, and for me, in terms of the issue around equity, I did file the bill along with in the Senate. Senator Booker has a companion bill on equity for Black farmers, and clearly we have historically there's been discrimination and disparity, and so we want to try to address that. Now, we're going to need, because I can tell you that the majority of the people, not the majority, but the number, yeah, it has to be the majority because we're in the minority, but on the committee may not see it the way I do. But I want to be able to bring all of the thinkers in the room and the information and the support to that process. As a matter of fact, I think we need to even, I am in the process of trying to plan a field hearing right here in Charlotte in the next few months. And so hopefully we will be some ways along with the Farm Bill by then. We have had 3 meetings, and none of those meetings have we had full discussion about the Farm Bill. There is a schedule already, or at least we had a schedule for the 2018 when we did the Farm Bill. And so there'll be a schedule, and things will be discussed accordingly. But we also have to keep in mind that we only have 5 months left. Is that what it is? Yeah. So there's a lot of work that we need to do, and we really do need your input.
Great. I'm going to move ahead to a question from the audience because I think it's really helpful to think about these more holistically too, and I'm really valuing these responses. Are there any ideas about what this is going to mean for funding levels for grassroots food projects in the Farm Bill? You know, are there opportunities for the Farm Bill to actually trickle down to some of the grassroots efforts here?
If I can, I don't want to take up all the time talking about it, but and I'm sure that my colleague may want to mention it too. Tomorrow, the 17th, by the way, we have small, what used to be called earmarks. We have small, or at least opportunities for the community to submit grant proposals. Now, some of the things that we're talking about on its face will not be included, but when you think about facilities or having to expand space those kinds of things. I would certainly recommend that you go to our websites. The information is there. My office is available to help. If you are working on a proposal for the past 2 cycles, and giving certainly Mr. Jackson credit, he was not there. He just got elected. But we got a lot of good stuff for that district that he's representing, which I represented before everybody.
Just taking
And-
credit for all
Right,
that,
and he's taking credit for all of it.
all
so-
the ribbon cuttings.
Right, we got $32 million. And we can do, I think each office can do up to 15 projects. So I would encourage you to, go to the website and work on something and get really creative. Now, that's one way, but you ask about the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill does not do that. But we can, as members, look toward our budget down the road and certainly support efforts in that way. But I don't think they're going to be doing anything like that through the Farm Bill. We haven't done it, and it does not appear that that's going to be the case. But there are other opportunities where we can fit those kinds of things in.
That's the best kind of answer. No, it doesn't, but here's how you can get some money.
Yeah.
Love that. So I also have another question from the audience, and this speaks more to the farm aspect of things. Which specific part of the Farm Bill is designed to benefit small urban farms? I think we've talked a little bit about this, but if there are areas that you're particularly interested in, I want to start with Wisdom and Cherie. What part of the Farm Bill do you think is important for kind of small urban farms like yours?
Yeah, I would think it would really go into financing, like how finances or funds that are in the Farm Bill that are designated for urban farms, more urban spaces or small farms are allocated to the actual farmer. So that means looking at the processes and I guess all of the procedures that you have to go through, and even some of the people involved in getting those funds to the farmers, to the urban farmers. Really kind of tightening that procedural pipeline, if you would, to make sure funding gets to the farmers and take away some of the barriers, right? So really kind of, I guess, redoing that process in a way that makes it easier to get those funds. And
Yes, and one of the things that have supported us as beginning farmers in this community was farmers markets, like the Rosa Parks Farmers Market, like Uptown Farmers Market, like Camp North End. These are relatively new in terms of the age of them as compared to the regional farmers market, but them having the capacity to provide a space for a beginning farmer to sell, providing the ability to receive SNAP EBT tokens. I mean, I can just continue to talk. It is very important that farmers have the infrastructure, processing facilities, nonprofits who preserve land. All of these things, I think, are weaved into the Farm Bill. So making those processes easier for them to access funds, to grow what they're doing, will certainly support new and beginning farmers. And conservation is in this area, we know how development is happening so rapidly. We won't have places to farm in Mecklenburg County if we don't conserve them and put them into production for others. And then thinking creative, like how do our park systems create spaces, just like we lease out space for soccer people, we need to lease out space for beginning farmers. We need to be creative to provide the ability for someone who has a passion, who wants to grow and provide healthy food for their community. We have to have that weaved in. So I'm sorry, I had to add that in.
No, that's great.
Didn't you have earlier I saw the 12 titles? Can you put those back up?
Which one?
Well, from the
Oh, yeah,
beginning, when the
It was
rolling.
on that slide, actually, it was on the Farm Bill slide that was just up.
Yeah.
They're just very small in the other.
And I was going to say, I think the area around commodities also would be, and I sit on that committee. But no, there was early
It was
on-
a different slide,
Oh,
slide
I'm
deck,
sorry.
sorry.
Okay. But there are 12 titles.
Yeah.
that the bill covers. And all of the things that we're talking about in terms of the urban farmers and so forth are covered there. But I'm looking more at the commodities area, and I wish I could tell you I remember all 12 titles, but I don't. But, oh, you have them right
I got
there.
them here if you want to.
Okay, can I peek?
Sure.
Yeah, they're actually listed on here. So each of these pie pieces is one of them. And then the
So-
other one has the list of those other, the
So
1%
that I
in
wanted
there.
to mention, because it was raised, Title VI rural development, I think is one that will really address the areas that we're talking about right now. Yeah, thank you.
Great. May I make one? And this is a plea to our federal brothers and sisters. When wisdom mentions removing barriers and how challenging it is to get federal dollars, and we've experienced that, and again, with all good intentions, getting money from NRCS, they have more demand for it than they have supply, and then it takes a long time. So no one's fault, but it is arduous to get federal dollars. With all good intentions, so forth, it is arduous. And the one size fits all approach that the feds often take, and this isn't just with North Carolina, this is across the nation, is very frustrating even for us who love you. So to Wisdom's point, and also as a representative of a local organization that loves the federal government, if you can make it easier for us to get those dollars and understand and be able to reflect in your policies, one size does not fit all,
Absolutely.
would be huge. I would just share that.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara, for that. You're
Yes.
right. We saw that a lot when we all went through the pandemic, and I'm just grateful that we're not in the Hollywood squares today, that we're sitting out and actually talking to each other. But we saw that particularly when the pandemic was with us. We allocated dollars. At that time, I was sitting on financial services as well. And we put out a lot of money and we wanted it particularly to address the needs of small businesses, et cetera, mom and pops and so forth. And those folks just didn't get any money because all the big folks had all the people who could write the grants and all of that. And so we are certainly conscious of that and trying to make the kinds of adjustments so that you don't have a lot of barriers, because you don't need it. If you need support, you need the support. You need to be able to get the support. You don't need to take, it shouldn't take 2 and 3 years to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, the SNAP application, I think, is particularly long as well, but that's another
Yeah.
battle. Brett, did you have any response about the ideas for the benefits to small urban farms in the Farm Bill?
Yeah, there's so much, and I will just try and be brief, but there's the SLPA Act is huge for small farmers, making it easier to have local processing. We've heard from a lot of our urban farmers in the coalition who do pasture-based livestock that they used to be able to make appointments to have their meat processed 3 months in advance, and now it's at least a year. And so they're having to make appointments before the animals are even born. And that's really difficult. Also, again, SNAP, I'm a huge SNAP fan. Making it easier for folks to use SNAP at farmers markets is a huge way to give folks access to healthy food. Also, the slide that was talking about who is most at risk, there are huge barriers to people that are undocumented, folks that have disabilities. There are a lot of different barriers in regards to SNAP. College students is huge. The work requirements are like almost unattainable. And there are marker bills in the nutrition title to address all of those. So uplifting that is huge. And I could go on, but I will.
Thanks so much, Brett. And I know we've been talking about specific kind of urban farms in general. We also had an audience question, though, about ensuring that Black, Indigenous farmers and farmers of color have access to programs created through the Farm Bill. How can we work to eliminate barriers that these kind of farmers already face in accessing these programs?
Well, we're gonna hopefully do a lot of that through my bill, which we've got to build support for. Filing the bill is just the first step. But making sure that we have the kind of advocacy around it, not just outside of the Congress, but outside in the community, because you are the ones who can put pressure on and should on members of Congress to sign on to these bills so that we can get them heard. Now, that bill has been sent to the committee that I sit on. And I don't chair it, but I'm certainly going to be pushing Chair Thompson to have a hearing on the bill. I mean, listen, however you're going to vote for it, for or against it, but give us an opportunity to present it and to talk about it. And sometimes that does not happen in Congress. And unfortunately, that's a bad thing because I represent, as Jeff does, over 700,000 people. And when I speak, I'm really speaking for them. So, yeah, but that's the other thing. So that bill's going to address some of that inequity. We have other bills across the spectrum that will do the same thing, but that's, I think that's at least a good start.
That's really good to hear.
I can't emphasize the importance of sitting on the committee for which your bill has been assigned. There's just a huge benefit to being a member of the committee that is also considered is jurisdictionally appropriate for your bill, especially if you're a more senior member of that committee. That's a big deal. I'm on the science committee. So if y'all want to talk about science,
You got it.
whatever science angle we can get, right? And sometimes we stretch a little, we widen the lanes a little bit for our committee to try and insert something. All for it.
Just FYI, science is in the Farm Bill.
Science is, there's all kinds of research in the Farm Bill, right? But the Farm Bill is not going through the Science Committee.
Good point. Good point.
May I make one? So I'm going to introduce an element that plays to this, but it's not directly Farm Bill. Even if we do get everything we want in the Farm Bill, if we don't have enough local staff to execute, it doesn't matter. One of the issues that has hampered at least my district and perhaps others is when we get dollars from North Carolina Department of Ag, which is in my food chain, we don't have direct hiring authority with those dollars. So we may have, thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for stream rehabilitation and all the good stuff. But if I don't have enough conservation managers working for me to execute those plans, write conservation plans, work with the engineers, it doesn't matter. Farm Bill may address some of that with the volume, but locally within the General Assembly and with the dollars, we don't have that, which is why sometimes our farmers see these lag times. Okay, you with me?
Yeah, no,
Right,
absolutely.
Right, and I don't like necessarily having to say, well, be patient,
Yeah.
right? It'll take 2 years because we don't have enough manpower. That's the reality. And from an NRCS and the federal standpoint, for various reasons, they're not able, for example, to be competitive with commercial companies. So they have an exit there. So this is nothing new, but it makes it very hard to execute.
Yeah, and I think when I was talking about those barriers, it's not just in how, procedural barriers, but actual, and to your point, the people who are supposed to be where the money goes to in order to get to that next step, the farmer, if you go back to the Pigford decision in 1999, right, where all this, the largest discrimination suit in history of the U.S. that showed that there was all this, that the court said there was a lot of injustice and discrimination, a lot across the board. Now, what happened then was all of this did not happen because it was at the very top. These funds go to the local municipalities, and then those people are the ones who distribute it. In a lot of cases, the funds go to people they know, people they're connected to.
Yep.
And when it comes to people like us who may not be in the circle, then we don't get access. So there may be a lot of good stuff up top, but when it comes to filter down, the people who it is given to, sometimes even the organizations it is given to, don't get those funds, don't get that information. It's not just funds. Sometimes it's information. Sometimes it's academic resources, etc. That does not get out to marginalized, disadvantaged populations because the people, and I only bring up the case because if this is such a bad thing, not a single one of those people who were perpetrating these injustices had anything done to them. And in most cases, they were elevated to a higher level of oversight. So now we're working with the same people dealing with all the stuff that's piling up top that we could be benefiting from, but not being able to because that portion of the problem is still in place. You understand? So, and it also goes to not having fun staff members as well. But there's a couple things in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it's clear the Farm Bill's not going to solve everything. And there's a lot of things that have just been brought up and that we've been talking about that are about the larger way that government works and doesn't work together in some ways. Are there things that we can think about as, I've got these great experts here on the panel. What are the things that we can help improve that would help make sure that some of these things do get done at the local level through staffing or through or more equitable processes? What are things that we could do even outside the Farm Bill that would help us make sure these we may have been shut down, but we'll keep going. What are things that we can do at different levels? So we've got different levels of government and different levels of involvement here. What do you all think about this?
Well, I had the privilege of serving for a number of years from school board to Congress, a total of almost 40 years. Served 20 years in the North Carolina House. I think it's important, someone mentioned the state, and I don't know that we have any state legislators here, but I think we have to, as a community, be connected at all of those levels. And, as I represent you and Mr. Jackson in the U.S. Congress, we are there because of what happens in Raleigh. It's the state legislature, by constitution, that's set forth in the state constitution that requires them to draw the lines, redraw the lines, and so forth. And then, we got issues with that, but that's important. Who represents you in Washington is determined by who represents you in Raleigh. If you want good policy, you have to have good policy makers. And that's just important that that not only who they are, but certain responsibilities. When we allocate money, dollars, when we appropriate, as we call them in Washington, that money comes down to the state, and then the state sends it down to the counties, and then the county, the city, and so forth. So I think you have to be involved at all levels. That is so important, and hold elected officials at all levels accountable, because when good people don't go to the polls and vote for good people, bad people get elected, and they do awfully bad things to good people. I'm telling you what I know, but I just think that we have to recreate our mindset about those things, because all of the stuff that we're talking about and the needs that people have, we shouldn't have to struggle with that. We shouldn't have to struggle in the richest country that we can't feed our children, that we can't feed families. Why are we, it's just ridiculous. We've got money that we can spend and do all kinds of things. And I just believe that having safe, affordable housing and healthcare, those are basic things that everybody needs and should have. So, but don't get me started.
Now, these are not easy answers. I know we're not talking easy. Barbara, did you have something?
What I would propose is, if there's an opportunity, you have some excellent listening sessions. I'm always a believer of having listening sessions tied to something that's currently actionable, then it's meaningful. So there are IRA dollars coming through NRCS, USDA, that'll be focusing on all these things that we talked about, and it's over and above the Farm Bill. I would love to have an opportunity when that, and it's coming, as you know, a lot of money, where we can talk about how do we, as a team, submit a grant that addresses all these with input that would involve the district, because that's where all this comes together, state, county, et cetera, the different stakeholders here, the different farmers. So we can have, as a team, a holistic picture of, this is the federal dollars, this is what we need from the state, this is local, and so forth. Because right now we we don't have that benefit. It's hard to have it all coalesce, but it's necessary. So there's an opportunity to have a session like that, timed well, when we have a grant on the table or a couple of them, we can come together and address all of that to the extent reasonable. I would love that.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit because we've got some good questions from the audience. I want to make sure we get to, and this the gear shifting is thinking about what might be controversial in this. And I know Congresswoman Adams has said just passing it, some of this altogether is going to be a challenge, but we did get one specific question asking about the Agricultural Resiliency Act, which is one of the marker bills within the Farm Bill, I believe, that's around regional climate hubs to increase funding for the Rural Energy for America program. So are, parts of the bill like this, the Agricultural Resiliency Act, going to be really controversial, or are there other pieces that you all think is going to be really hard to kind of get a consensus around? Because this has been a bipartisan bill every time. So the question is, what's going to be difficult?
Snap and wick.
Is it because it's such a large part of that pie?
It's not, no, I don't think so. I think it just fits a narrative. Right now, people are looking for handy punching bags. And if you distort some aspects of this, you can turn them into handy punching bags. Are they really looking to save a buck off this? I guess they would like to, but I don't think fiscal concerns are really what's driving this. I think it plays well as a piece of political offense, but it only plays well as offense if you mischaracterize the actual beneficiaries of the program, the eligibility requirements for the program, and sort of the net effect of those programs. That's the bad news, is that Dr. Adams and I will be playing defense on large portions of this. The good news is that there's an overwhelming chance that a farm bill will pass. It is one of the small handful of bills that are, if not must pass, very close to must pass. A farm bill has passed virtually every single year for some number of decades running. If this weren't considered a must-pass bill, there would be a very good chance that it wouldn't pass simply by virtue of having a divided Congress. There are going to be a lot of relatively uncontroversial bills that will still be dead on arrival because they're not in this category of must-pass. This is basically a must-pass bill. So we're going to have an opportunity to do good things with this bill. A lot of them are going to be smaller things, small, not in the sense that they're not impactful, but only in the sense that they won't make the news. The area where we're going to have an opportunity to do new, good things with the Farm Bill will be areas that are too small to make the news. That's good. If it makes the news, it gets politicized, it becomes a weapon. That's bad. Most of the stuff that we're talking, making it easier to use SNAP at farmers markets, that ain't never gonna make the news. Which means it's possible, which means that we can do it. Everything that Barbara's talking about, making sure that it's easier to use funds to hire staff, ain't never gonna make the news. So when I hear ideas like this, what my brain thinks is, that's possible, that's possible, that's possible, that's possible. And the huge fight is going to be over stuff that will end up making the news. That's sort of how I see the landscape.
One of the things I want to add is, and Jeff's absolutely correct. Excuse me, Congressman.
Oh, that's right.
But I just think that we have to have greater sensitivity among people who sit in policy-making decisions like we do. If you've never been hungry, if your belly has never growled, you don't understand my pain. And I think that's part of the problem. So we talk about hunger, it's, oh no, these people are just lazy, they don't. And I think that work requirement that some of my colleagues are trying to push now is ridiculous. 20 hours a week, we're talking about $6. We're talking about $6 that for per person in this farm bill. And so they want you to work 20 hours, whether you can or not, whether there's available work in your area or not, whether if you have children, you don't have anyone to care for the children. I mean, so people are at home for many reasons, sometimes because that's where they have to be. And until we can create a level of sensitivity among my colleagues, then I think that's part of what's driving this. People don't listen. If you can write a check for your child to go to college and you don't need financial aid, you don't understand why I need it, right? And why I'm pushing for, reduction of some of the student debt. But I just think that that's part of the problem. People have to be, and we say really in your shoes to really understand. You have to be able to, you have to have had a time where you've gone without food, without health insurance. I didn't grow up with health insurance. We didn't have it. Had a sick sister, sickle cell anemia, passed away 2 weeks before her 27th birthday. Many years ago, of course, we know more about sickle cell and people are living longer. But we went to the emergency room 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. That was how we got our medical attention, which is why I work so hard for it. I know what people need and what we should be able to provide. And food is just a basic thing. It's just a basic thing, and we shouldn't be trying to pull. And yeah, they're gonna go after that 7 to 6%, but we're gonna have to protect it because it impacts so many children and families and people that are just invisible to us. We don't see it. You don't see these lines. Remember during the pandemic, and people were pulling their cars up and getting food in the trunk of their cars. You don't see the lines anymore, but I can guarantee you they are invisible lines. They're still there, and people are still hungry and needing food.
There's so much that I think you both articulated it perfectly as controversial that shouldn't be. I think your bill and Senator Booker's similar bill in Senate it's very silly that it's controversial. We know that our food system is built on land stolen from indigenous people and then cultivated by enslaved people, right? And that's not ancient history, and it's still very much prevalent in our food system. So supporting Black farmers to actually be able to have that land and cultivate it and profit should not be controversial. And I also think, like you mentioned, ARA, not only does it support small farmers, local farmers, but the Farm Bill was partly a response to the Dust Bowl, which was a climate issue. And so whether or not we want to name it as climate change or extreme weather events, no one can deny that they're not happening or that they are happening and that they're impacting farmers. And so regardless of what we call it, it's real, and we need to take action because it is heavily impacting how we access food. And we're running out of time because like y'all are saying about conserving the land. Once it's gone, it's gone, and we really need to make sure that we have access to it and can feed our country.
There have been some really great suggestions. Oh yeah, applaud all the really great ideas here. There's been some really great suggestions made already about what people, everyday people, maybe who aren't representing us in Washington, but what can we do to influence the direction of the bill? It sounds like things that might go under the notice of everyone, might be places where there can be more action, but I know a lot of us still care about SNAP and want to see that move forward. So especially our representatives, what are the things that everyday people like us can do to try to do this? We're not going to be able to talk with you every day, unfortunately, but what can we do? Can we share our stories? Can we talk about kind of the things that are affecting us? And who do we talk to about that?
I'll go first.
Go ahead. I've been talking about it. I'll let you go first. I'll yield to the gentleman.
Every Monday, when I show up to my office that morning, the first thing that we do is a scheduling meeting. And we all sit around and someone prints out all of the requests to meet with me that we've gotten. And we go through and we give like a thumbs up, thumbs down. We've given a thumbs up to every single person from the district, every single person from Mecklenburg, and any person who has any tangential tie whatsoever to the district, which is my way of saying, you can all get a hold of me. And I rely heavily on people with expertise. I think expertise and experience is cool, And I don't know when it became fun to disregard experts and to mock people with actual experience for things, but I really enjoy, the best part of this job is that I can, if all I want to do is learn from someone, I can get just about anyone in the country on the phone. And that's pretty cool. But too many people think you can't get a hold of us. We're way more accessible than you think. There really aren't that many people from our districts saying, can I please get a 10, 15-minute phone call? You don't got to drive to DC. Any one of you can get on the phone with us. Any one of you.
Well, let me add that I am a stakeholder representative. I represent everybody out here. You are all stakeholders, and that's why I'm glad to be here. But I also will tell you that, and Mr. Jackson is correct. You don't have to travel all the way to Washington. You can come see us in our offices. But I will also, and my deputy chief and scheduler and everything else is back there, Sandra Brown, she does all of that. And we have scheduling meetings twice a week. You need to work on that.
More people want to meet with her.
8:30 in the morning, Tuesdays and Thursdays, yeah, and I'm on Zoom, yeah. But anyway, let me just also say that you are the wind beneath our wings. And when we go in to lobby for you, it's because of you. But I will tell you that you can tweet, you can text, whatever it is you do to reach out, whether it's about legislation, you need to do it. Because all of our calls are logged in. And I don't think there's a member who wants to, I mean, I had a member to tell me once, when you have those people stop calling my office, they're just blowing up my phone, and my computer is breaking down because people are sending email. And that's really, I think, one of the ways that you lobby. Your representatives should look at, I always try to ask my folks before I go in for, vote for legislation, vote for a bill. Well, what are the folks back home saying? How many people called about this bill? And that's important. Now, I may agree with you or I may not, but you'll know why I don't. Because I'm always willing to tell you what I think my position is and why it's what it is. But don't just think that because you went to the polls and voted for us, that's the end of the journey, or that's the end of your involvement. That's the beginning, really. But you have to, with technology now, you can tune in. You would have been able, and still can go back with YouTube and see the meeting that I had. I sit on ed and the workforce, education and the workforce, and I chair on the workforce side. I'm ranking member on the workforce side. We had a meeting last Wednesday that began at 10 o'clock a.m. And I think we may have taken 1 or 2 votes in between. And that meeting adjourned at 2:30 a.m. in the morning. So I got back to my apartment at 2:45. I got to bed about 3:30, and I had my 8:30 meeting that next morning, Sandra. And I say that to say that you can kind of keep up with what we're doing. All of the committees are pretty much televised at the time that we're doing them, or you can go back and you can look. And I would certainly suggest to all of you to stay in touch, to make your voices heard by getting on either of our calendars, but also by sending emails, sending an email, sending a voicemail, making a phone call, leaving a message, because we count those, and they become really important because you are very valuable stakeholders. And I just, I don't think our stakeholders, I don't think our public stays as involved as they could be. And it doesn't have to be just for sessions like this, but anyway, I appreciate seeing all of you here. Now, matter of fact, some of you I saw on yesterday. But you need to have another meeting. Schedule another.
So lots of scheduling meetings, lots of opportunities to reach out. We really appreciate that. Are there other ways that people could get involved through more grassroots efforts or advocacy campaigns or things? I know we've got a lot of people even on this panel who want to start doing more. What do you think would be influential in terms of making sure we get SNAP funded or making sure some of the smaller, so-called smaller things might go through?
Well, I can talk about what we're doing. We're a for-profit business, Deep Root CPS Farm. If you want to go on Instagram and Facebook and follow us, go ahead. But we get tons of calls from Black indigenous beginning farmers, those who are interested in farming, those who are thinking about farming, as if we are a public service provider to give them insight and information. We could easily turn them away. We're busy farming. We're on a working farm, but we don't. And we recognize the need to be in community with these farmers, or growers is how we call them. So we began at the beginning of the year, we started a growers network of those who are beginners, interested, active, advanced farmers. So we can all be in community together, understanding Farm Bill, understanding challenges, understanding how to begin. And we're doing monthly convenings. We had our first seed swap last month or this month. And our next convening will be on April the 30th at Old North Farm in Shelby, North Carolina. And it's just a wonderful way for us to all be in community together and to share insight of who the players are and encourage each other to reach out to the players, encourage each other to access or try to access resources. And so that's what we're doing as a mission of our for-profit business. And, you know, we're in community with a lot of other organizations. We know who they are. We try to be in community with them. I think that is very important. As a farmer, working with other farmers, there's a social network that already exists. If you are a Black farmer or a beginning farmer, you don't know what that social network is. You don't have some of the insights and where to get grain, where to get whatever. Yes, it's so much that we just don't know, but we're not going to be able to, well, maybe we can turn to our ag extension, and we've tried that to get insight, but we got to turn to each other, right, to share that insight. And so that's what we've done. I think if more community group, more farmers started to do that all across the state, we'd have a force, man. We would have a force. And so that's our contribution, or that's my suggestion.
That's excellent, right? We got a social network. We got to connect to each other. Those of you who are online, those of you who are here, I think we're going to have time at the end here to kind of socialize and get to talk to each other about what we can do. Brett, I know you have some suggestions as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm representing the North Carolina Food System Advocacy Coalition, and we are farmers, but also advocates, folks that are in finance, working around like crop insurance, commodities, things, and basically anyone that eats is impacted by food systems policy. And so we're working very similar structure to what y'all are doing. We're basically getting folks that are in the same district to get together because we are louder together, and meeting with representatives across the board and having farm tours and just showcasing what we are able to do and where we need support from our legislators. And so, yeah, anyone is welcome to join. There's no membership barrier. And we also do education outreach because, again, at so many of these things, how would you even know to benefit from them if you don't know they exist? And so that is also really key.
Yeah, diversity is our strength, unity our power. Everybody here, I'm sure, has some kind of email network, and each one reach one. You know, send the information out to your network. That's helpful. Thank you.
Well, I had some other questions from the audience, but a lot of them got answered along the way. So we've had such a great discussion here. And I do want to thank, I think it's the final slide, which is thanking all of you for coming, and for the groups that organized this, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Food Policy Council, of course, also interested in policy. So getting involved with them might be a good idea, as well as these others, including one Brett just mentioned, the North Carolina Food System Advocacy Coalition. So I think we're gonna, is it time to kind of socialize and get to know your networks here and online maybe, and find out what you can do together to try to push some of the efforts that you'd like to see in the Farm Bill or other related bills forward, because we are, as Dr. Adams has said, we're here together and we need to work together. So thank you all so much for joining us, and thanks to our panelists.